You work at the other end of Delaware, starting like that, and you have to make that 5-mile run every day, and you don't want to spend more than a minute doing it. Maybe, I can say it. The Hayabusa, I don't know about the ZX 14, I've never ridden it. The Hayabusa is a barge and twisty roads. It's a streamlined high-speed bike. Is it? Yeah, so it's a little bigger, heavier, probably more sluggish. Yeah, it's a straight line for my bike. I like something that handles. Anyway, so the carburetors sites were set intentionally lean to comply with EPA's CAR, California Air Resource Board. By having fewer hydrocarbons here, I'll have fewer unburned hydrocarbons here. This is the theory. Less gasoline in means less pollution coming out. That's seemed very straightforward. The legislators said, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to force you to be intentionally lean on most of your mixtures. And so those are preset by the factory to comply with the government regulations before the bike is sold. And those also are going to be affecting your performance somewhat. To check these, here's a gas analyzer. I think I talked about this with carb adjustments. This is what they look like. Most gas analyzers are standalone units that stand about 2 feet, 3 feet tall. It's a big gauge so you can read it from across the room. The newer ones are digital, of course. I'm old school. I like analog. Now, besides the preset stuff, now all that stuff is stuff that we're not supposed to be able to change. All those preset things. Those do affect your performance somewhat. You do basically have to take your engine apart and start over to be getting around that. And of course, you'll be in violation state law if you do that. Just a quick mention. Now we have air injection. Air injection is being used by both the auto industry and the motorcycle industry and have been for some decades now. The auto industry in California started using this in the late 1970s. Vehicles that were sold in California had an accessory air injection system installed. Vehicles that were brought into California from out of the country had to have an aftermarket air injection system installed. The air injection system consisted of an impeller pump. It's just an air pump, which is driven off a fan belt. Right there. It's because it's an impeller, it's not a positive displacement. It's very, very low drag. So you can take that air pump and spin the shaft in your finger and just roll around. Very, very low drag pump. And that will pump fresh air into the exhaust manifold right behind on the outside of the exhaust valve. Any unburned hydrocarbon that's coming out there will now have enough oxygen to combust and turn into carbon dioxide water vapor. All right? So this is going to be affecting your unburned hydrocarbons. They're coming out. They're ignited by the fact that when they come out of the exhaust valve, there's flames coming out of the exhaust valve along with it. The flames just ignite the fuel in the pipe. You add some fresh air right there, and it burns the exhaust pipe, turns into carbon dioxide water vapor, the good pollutants from the hydrocarbon. This has no effect on performance at all. So there's such little drag off that air pump that it doesn't affect the engine horsepower at all. And what it's doing in the exhaust pipe is happening after the engine's made its power. This is on its way out that we're doing this. So this has zero effect on your performance. All it does is turn hydrocarbons into carbon dioxide water vapor. It's a good idea. Now, the auto guys hated this because all of a sudden there's all these excess lines. But you got to remember that before this, they only had like one vacuum line in the engine for their just distributor advance, and maybe a second vacuum line if they have power brakes or an automatic transmission might have a second vacuum line. Now all of a sudden they have all this extra plumbing in there. It was like in their way, they hated it. So for normal driving, we have the air pump here. Some of these will actually have a valve in place. Allow a little bit of air to get into the engine for normal driving. For deceleration, the valve will shut off and stop the air from getting in there. This is to prevent backfire. If you deny oxygen to the unburned hydrocarbons, when you shut up, when you decelerate, you close the butterfly throttle, vacuum goes up, fuel goes up, and that would normally go out as unburned hydrocarbons, but if you introduce enough air to it then, so much will ignite the exhaust pipe, it backfires. And that's not good. And so deceleration, that fresh air is cut off to prevent that. Now, instead of using a belt-driven pump, clearly an aftermarket Band-Aid add-on in California did. Now we have pulse-operated ones, where we take a vacuum tap from the intake manifold. In the vacuum, remember we had the fuel pump last week that was vacuum-operated? We can also have an air pump that's vacuum-operated. And with each pulse, now motorcycles, the pulse is pretty dramatic, because each manifold is separate. Take that pulse and use that to pump air. And so it's on, we're not taking anything from the engine, we're just using the same vacuum pulse that's there anyway. We're flexing the diaphragm with it and using that as an air pump to blow air into the exhaust. Most automobiles are also now using the pulse operated pump. I don't see too many air pumps anymore, by manuals. And we have this in the motorcycle industry as well. Here's the vacuum tap, and you take manifold, you go into the air pump, and the air pump is taking fresh air to the air box and sending it right to the backside, right here, through this little port. The cylinder was modified for this, right behind the exhaust valve, so that we can provide fresh air to burn the unburned hydrocarbons in the exhaust. This is called air injection. Kawasaki called it the KAS, their Kawasaki Clean Air System, or KCAS. Kawasaki's clean air system. Most manufacturers have some form of this. BMW certainly uses something like this. Honda uses it. Suzuki has these lines. Sometimes the air line is internal inside the cylinder head. Sometimes there's actually an external metal line going to each exhaust port. So be watching for it. The only thing you would say about removing it is the weight of this. That's maybe a quarter of a pound, that's not much. Total weight. If you do remove it, remember there's a vacuum tap right there that must be plugged off. But if you remove it, you just say a pound. I'd leave it there and have cleaner air. Not affect your performance on the street at all. On the racetrack, yeah, you got a reason. A half pound might be different between first place and second place. Or third place and spraying the champagne and standing in the mosh and getting sprayed by champagne. Or you're on the winner's podium or you're down the crowd. In that case, yeah, I'm going to take it away. That's racing. Racing. Here's another air injection system right here. You guys may have seen this when you're doing valve adjustments and taking the top of the airbox off and doing some synchronization. See all this stuff underneath the gas tank. This is the stuff. You have one big hose coming from the airbox, providing fresh air to this valve. It sort of just floats there. It's just sort of suspended by the weight of the hoses. That then takes some of this stuff here. This is pulse operated by this vacuum line. Here's my cart, here's my vacuum line. And sends it down to the exhaust valve. Now this one here, the porting to get to the exhaust valve is internal. It's inside the cylinder. Okay. So air injection is a fact of life on motorcycles. Has absolutely no impact whatsoever on the way the bike runs. It's often some of the first of the pollution controls that are removed from a motorcycle. People go, I won't do this, throw it away. And then suddenly the bike doesn't run right. Or if it has no effect, you're just polluting when you don't have to. Personally, because of the instances of asthma that are increasing at an alarming rate in LA County and the rest of the country, actually, I think we need these things. The little bit you pollute on a racetrack is one thing, but for your daily driver, really would like to see you get those controls where they're at. Even then, no. But then for the air injection system, ones that are belt driven have so little drag on the engine. You know, you can hold the air pump and spin the pulley with your finger. Very, very little drag on that. You won't even notice it. The ones that affect performance are the ones that are government mandated. That's the government mandated lean mixtures, the government mandated non-adjustable timing, and all that. That's the stuff that's going to be affecting your performance. And the fuel mixtures are a combination of the intake manifold, the air box, the air filter, and the exhaust system, as well as the carburetor or fuel injector. Now we're going to look at some more collision controls we have on bikes. Part 2. Evaporator systems, exhaust gas recirculation, and catalytic converters. Now, one of these we don't have on bikes yet. I see no reason why we shouldn't have them on motorcycles. And they work pretty well for what they do. And I predict that we will have them on motorcycles soon, so I include them. Exhaust gas recirculation is not found on all cars, not found on any motorcycles yet. But as soon as word gets out how much motorcycles pollute, this is kind of on the QT here, motorcycles pollute more than cars do. Pollution controls on cars are so strict, and on motorcycles we're just starting.